The grand conclave of the Ethelgard Dominion did not shout. It hummed with the terrifying, low-frequency vibration of 1,000 distinct thrusters holding a massive structure in geosynchronous orbit. The air within the high chamber was recycled, sterile, and cold, scented faintly with ozone and the musky pheromones of the Cathar warlords who paced the obsidian floor. Light filtered in through polarized viewports that stretched from the polished floor to the vaulted ceiling, revealing the purple bruise of the nebula that served as the backdrop for their empire's capital. But no one was looking at the stars today. Every optical sensor, every compound eye, and every cybernetic implant was fixed upon the holographic projection hovering in the center of the room. It was a map of the known galaxy, a swirling spiral of light and data, teeming with trade routes, military buffer zones, and the glowing nodes of colonized systems. Yet in the galactic southeast, there was a void. A jagged, irregular scar of absolute blackness where the holographic light simply refused to render data. High Justicar Thalcora adjusted the ceremonial robes that draped over his chitinous shoulders, his mandibles clicking together in a rhythm of suppressed anxiety. He was old. His carapace faded from the lustrous obsidian of his youth to a dusty charcoal gray, scarred by the laser burns of the Unification Wars. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had signed treaties that ended genocides and authorized bombardments that started them. But the subject before the conclave today made his hearts beat with a disjointed, erratic rhythm. The human exclusion zone, the silence, the terrifying blank spot on the map that no species had entered for 300 standard cycles. The galaxy had moved on, expanded, fought, and bled, but that dark patch of space remained immutable, a locked door in a house everyone else believed they owned. The resource projections are undeniable, Grand Marshal Vrexian boomed, his voice amplified by the acoustic architecture of the chamber. Vrexian was a towering specimen of the reptilian Sarnax race, his scales glistening with the oil of vitality, his uniform adorned with medals from conflicts that Thalcora viewed as petty skirmishes. Vrexian slammed a heavy, clawed fist onto the tactical table, causing the hologram to flicker. The hyperlanes in the Lyra sector are collapsing. The subspace instability is spreading like a rot. If we do not secure a new route to the outer rim, the economy of the Dominion, and that of our allies, will stagnate within a generation. We will starve in the dark while the humans sit on the most stable stellar clusters in the quadrant. Thalcora remained seated, his many eyes blinking in sequence. He waited for the murmurs of agreement to die down. The representatives of the trade guilds, the technopriests of Aurax, and the feudal lords of the rim worlds were all nodding. Desperation had a way of making foolishness look like bravery. "And your proposal, Marshal?" Thalcora asked, his voice soft, sibilant, cutting through the bluster like a scalpel. "You wish to simply knock on their door." "I propose we stop fearing ghost stories," Vrexian snarled, turning his slit-pupiled gaze upon the Justicar. "We are the Ethelgard Dominion. We command the combined might of a dozen sentient species. We possess dreadnoughts that can crack moons. The humans, they have been silent for centuries. They do not trade. They do not explore. They do not expand. For all we know, they are dead, extinct, victims of their own isolationism. Or perhaps they are simply weak, hiding behind a reputation earned in an era when we were still using combustion engines. We enter the zone. We chart the lanes. We take what is necessary for survival. It is the law of nature." "It is the law of the fool," Thalcora countered, standing slowly. His joints popped, a sound that echoed in the sudden silence. "You speak of them as if they are a primitive tribe hoarding water. Have you forgotten the logs of the Vanguard? Have you forgotten the Kyrie expedition?" "Myths," Vrexian dismissed, waving a hand. "Distorted data." "Data does not distort into madness," Thalcora said, his voice rising with a sudden, terrifying authority. "The Vanguard did not report enemy fire. It reported stillness. It reported that its engines simply ceased to function, that its weapons systems locked down, overridden by a code so complex our best cryptographers are still weeping over the fragments today. They were not destroyed, Marshal. They were turned off, like a toy. And then they were pushed back, gently, by gravity wells that should not have existed. That is not weakness. That is a level of control we cannot comprehend." A ripple of unease moved through the chamber. The memory of the humans was a strange thing in the galactic consciousness. They were not conquerors. In the ancient records, before the exclusion zone was established, humans were known as chaotic, fractious, and oddly resilient. They had been traders, mercenaries, sometimes pirates. But then, abruptly, they had recalled every ship, every colonist, every diplomat. They had retreated into their sector and broadcast a single, repeating message on all frequencies. Do not follow. This is for your safety. Safety, the Marshal scoffed, sensing the room wavering. That is the language of cowards. They hide because they are afraid of us, afraid of the Dominion's unity. We need those systems, Thalcora. The Council has already voted on the necessity. The only question remaining is the method. Do we go begging or do we go as sovereigns? Thalcora looked around the room. He saw the greed in the eyes of the guildmasters. He saw the hunger for glory in the eyes of the military commanders. He saw the cold calculation in the eyes of the politicians. Logic had lost. Fear of the economic collapse outweighed the fear of the unknown. If we go, Thalcora said, his voice heavy with the weight of a prophecy he hoped was wrong, we do not go as conquerors. We go as a diplomatic envoy escorted by the fleet for protection only. I will lead the delegation. Vrexian narrowed his eyes. A diplomat leading a war fleet, that is a recipe for hesitation. It is a recipe for survival, Thalcora replied. If they are dead, I will certify it. If they are weak, you may have your lanes, but if they are what I suspect they are, then you will need someone who knows how to speak, not just how to bark. The motion passed. The armada would assemble. The silence of 300 years was about to be broken. The journey to the border of the human exclusion zone took weeks of subspace travel, a time utilized by the fleet to conduct endless drills and simulations. The sheer scale of the Dominion armada was breathtaking. It was a river of metal flowing through the stars. Heavy cruisers with hulls thick enough to ram asteroids, destroyer escorts buzzing like angry hornets, logistical carriers the size of cities, and at the center the flagship Sovereign's Will, a dreadnought of such magnitude that it possessed its own gravitational pull. Thalcora spent the journey in his meditation chambers, reviewing the old archives. He watched grainy footage from centuries ago, humans laughing in spaceports, humans arguing over trade tariffs, humans fighting with kinetic weapons that seemed archaic by modern standards. There was a vitality to them, a chaotic energy that was distinct from the rigid order of the Dominion. Why had it stopped? Why had the fire gone out? He was interrupted by the chime of his comms unit. "Hi, Justicar," the voice of Captain Kalen came through, clipped and tense. "We are dropping out of subspace. We have arrived at the perimeter." Thalcora rose, feeling the subtle shift in the deck plates as the inertial dampeners compensated for the transition from hypervelocity to real space. He walked to the bridge, a cavernous command center bathed in the crimson light of tactical displays. Grand Marshal Vrexian was already there, standing on the raised dais, his tail twitching in anticipation. "Report," Vrexian commanded. "Sensors are stabilizing," a tactical officer called out. "We are holding position at the coordinates of the old demarcation line. No contacts, no passive emissions, no energy signatures. It's dead space, Marshal." The view screen activated. Before them lay a region of space that looked deceptively normal. Distant stars twinkled in the black canvas. There were no warning buoys, no minefields, no patrols, just the open void. "See," Vrexian sneered, gesturing at the screen. "Nothing. A scarecrow rotting in a field, all this fear for empty vacuum." Thalcora stepped forward, his eyes scanning the readouts. "Check the background radiation," he ordered quietly. "Check the gravitational variance." The sensor officer hesitated, then obeyed. "Sir, readings are normal. Wait." The officer's fingers flew across the holographic interface. "That's impossible." "What is it?" Vrexian snapped. "The background radiation. It's flat, perfectly flat. There is no cosmic microwave background noise. It's been filtered, scrubbed." "Scrubbed," Vrexian frowned. "That's a glitch." "It is not a glitch," Thalcora whispered. "It is a threshold." "Fleet advance," Vrexian ordered, ignoring the Justicar. "Standard formation, weapons hot but hold fire. Let's claim this space." The armada surged forward, crossing the invisible line that had marked the forbidden territory for generations. The crews held their breath. Every scanner was pushed to maximum gain. They expected alarms, traps, sudden ambushes. Nothing happened. Minutes turned into hours. The fleet moved deeper into human space. They passed a planetary system, a gas giant with dazzling rings. Probes were launched. No colonies, no mining stations, just pristine wilderness. "They are gone," Vrexian declared, his confidence turning into arrogance. "The plague must have taken them, or civil war. We are masters of this domain now." But Thalcora felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the bridge. "We are being watched," he murmured. "I can feel it." "You feel ghosts, old one?" Vrexian laughed. "Navigation, plot a course for the inner systems. We head for Sol. If there is anything left of them, it will be there." And then the universe blinked. It was not a weapon discharge. It was not an explosion. It was a sudden, instantaneous shift in reality. One moment, the stars were there. The next, the entire view screen went white, then snapped back to black. "Report," Vrexian roared. "Did we hit something?" "Systems offline," voices cried out in panic. "Main power it's gone, reserves failing, life support is on emergency battery, weapons are dead, shields are down." The hum of the ship died. The vibration of the thrusters vanished. The terrifying silence of the void rushed in to fill the hull. The artificial gravity persisted, likely due to emergency capacitors, but the Sovereign's will, the mightiest warship in the galaxy, was drifting. "Look," Thalcora said, pointing at the main viewport. Out in the darkness, something was decloaking, but it didn't shimmer into existence like Dominion ships. It didn't warp in, it simply unfolded. It was not a fleet. It was a single structure. A ship, if one could call it that, though it defied all naval architecture. It was a monolith of matte black material that seemed to drink the light of the distant stars. It was geometric, brutalist, and immense. It dwarfed the Sovereign's will as a mountain dwarfs a pebble. There were no glowing engine ports, no visible weapon batteries, no bridge towers, just a slab of absolute geometry hanging in the void. "Size estimate?" the sensor officer gasped, his console running on backup power. It registers as a planetary mass, sir. It is 300 kilometers in length." Vrexian stared, his mouth slightly open. "That is not a ship, that is a station." "It is moving," Thalcora corrected. From the monolith, no fighters launched. No missiles streaked forth. Instead, a signal pierced the dead comms channels of the entire Dominion fleet. It bypassed their encryption, their firewalls, and their translation matrices. It spoke directly to the bridge speakers in perfect, unaccented High Ethelgardian. "This is Admiral Aris Thorne of the United Terran Coalition ship Silentium. You have crossed a quarantined boundary. Power down your weapons, though I suspect you'll find they are already inert, and prepare to be boarded. Do not resist. Resistance is unnecessary." "Boarded?" Vrexian's shock turned to rage. "They disable my ship and dare to board. Security teams to the airlocks, repel all intruders." "Marshal," Thalcora grabbed Vrexian's arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "Look at that thing. They disabled an entire armada without firing a shot. If you send security teams, you are sending them to die for pride. We must talk." "I do not talk to ghosts," Vrexian shook him off. But the choice was not his. A soft hum resonated through the bridge. In the center of the command deck, the air shimmered. It was not a violent teleportation. There was no crack of ozone or flash of light. It was a seamless integration of matter. 3 figures appeared. They were human. They wore suits of dark gray material that looked more like woven fabric than armor, yet it rippled with a subtle energy field. They carried no visible weapons. Their faces were exposed. The central figure was a woman of indeterminate age. Her hair was silver, cut short and severe. Her face was lined with the kind of exhaustion that comes not from lack of sleep, but from carrying a burden too heavy for a single soul. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and profoundly sad. "I am Admiral Thorne," she said. Her voice was not amplified, yet it carried clearly. "Which of you commands this procession?" Vrexian drew his sidearm, a plasma disruptor of considerable power, and leveled it at her chest. "I am Grand Marshal Vrexian of the Ethelgard Dominion. You have committed an act of war, human. Release my ships, or I will." Thorne didn't move. She didn't flinch. She simply looked at the weapon with mild curiosity. "Marshal Vrexian," she said, "your weapon has no power cell. We removed the charge potential from all chemical and energy propellants in your fleet the moment you crossed the helipause." Vrexian pulled the trigger. Click, click. He stared at the gun, then hurled it to the floor in fury. "We are not here to fight you," Thorne continued, her gaze shifting to Thalcora. She seemed to recognize the intelligence in the Justicar's eyes. "We are here to stop you from making a mistake that cannot be undone. Why have you come?" Thalcora stepped forward, bowing his head slightly, a sign of respect between equals. "I am High Justicar Thalcora. We came because our people are desperate, Admiral. Our trade routes are failing. We believed your space was empty or that you were hoarding resources we need to survive. We did not know. We did not know you possessed such power." Thorne sighed, a sound that seemed to deflate the tension in the room. "We hoard nothing but dust and ghosts, Justicar. You see power, I see a prison wall." "Prison?" Thalcora asked. "You are prisoners." "No," Thorne said softly. "We are the wardens." She tapped her wrist, and the environment of the bridge changed. The tactical map of the Dominion was replaced by a projection from the human ship. It showed the human exclusion zone, but it was detailed in ways the Dominion charts were not. "You believe we hid from the galaxy out of fear," Thorne said, walking through the hologram. "You thought we were isolationists, xenophobes. We let you believe that. It was safer for you to hate us than to know the truth." "The truth," Vrexian demanded, though his voice had lost its edge. 300 years ago," Thorne began, "humanity reached the peak of its expansion. We were like you, arrogant, hungry. We pushed into the deep void, experimenting with dimensional drives, trying to breach the fabric of the universe to travel instantly across galaxies." She paused, and the hologram shifted to show a tear in space, a jagged wound of purple and black energy. "We succeeded," she said. "We opened a door, but we didn't just open a door to another place. We opened a door to the static." "The static?" Thalcora asked. The word felt wrong in his mind, like a glitch in thought. "It is not a species," Thorne explained. "It is not a civilization. It is an entropy event, a consciousness that exists in the space between universes. When we punctured the wall, it noticed us. It began to pour through. It consumes information. It consumes physical laws. Where it touches, physics breaks down. Stars stop burning. Atoms lose their cohesion. It is the end of all things." The room was silent. The scale of what she was suggesting was paralyzed the mind. "We tried to close the breach," Thorne continued. "We failed. The tier is stable. It cannot be stitched shut. So we did the only thing we could. We built a dam." She gestured to the map. The human space was not a territory. It was a fortification. "Every star system in our sector has been converted into a containment field," Thorne said. "Our fleets do not patrol for pirates. They patrol the breach. We fight a war every single second of every single day. We hold the line against an enemy that you cannot negotiate with, cannot intimidate, and cannot kill. We push it back. We repair the reality anchors. We bleed and we die so that the rest of the galaxy can continue to bicker over trade routes and borders in ignorance." Vrexian looked at the hologram, then at the Admiral. "You lie. If this war is so great, why have we seen nothing? Why no energy spikes?" "Because we absorb it," Thorne said. "The Silentium and her sister ships are designed to dampen energy. We dampen the conflict so it doesn't ripple out and shatter your fragile subspace networks. We keep the noise down so you can sleep at night." You protect us," Thalcora whispered. "In silence while we mocked you, while we planned to invade you." "We don't need your gratitude," Thorne said, her voice hardening. "We need your absence, your ships, your drives. They create ripples, subspace wakes. Those wakes are like ringing a dinner bell to the static. Your arrival here has weakened the local integrity fields by 4%. You are making the wall thinner." Suddenly, the Silentium's projection turned red. A klaxon sounded, not on the Dominion ship, but from the human comms link. "Admiral," a voice crackled from the human ship. "Breach detected in Sector 4. The integrity field is failing. The Sovereign's will's warp trail destabilized the local manifold. It's coming through." Thorne's expression shifted from weary diplomat to iron commander. "Marshal Justicar, you wanted to see human space? You are about to see it, but I cannot guarantee you will survive the view." She tapped her wrist. "Emergency protocols, repower the alien vessels, link their fire control to our tactical net, use them as batteries." "You are taking our ship," Vrexian shouted. "I am saving your life," Thorne snapped. "Look outside." Power flooded back into the Sovereign's will. The lights flickered on. The view screen reactivated. And the universe screamed. The darkness of space was no longer black. It was tearing apart. A fissure thousands of kilometers long had opened off the starboard bow of the human monolith. Out of it poured wrongness. It wasn't matter. It was a visual distortion, a static hiss that the eyes couldn't focus on. It looked like the universe was being erased by a giant cosmic eraser. Where the static touched the vacuum, reality simply ceased to be. "Targeting," Thorne ordered into her comms. "Pattern Delta 9, focus fire on the aperture." The Silentium shifted. For the first time, the alien crew saw the human weapons. They were not lasers or plasma bolts. The monolith opened up, revealing vast banks of machinery that hummed with a terrifying resonance. Beams of pure, concentrated gravity lashed out, hitting the fissure. They didn't explode, they grabbed. They tried to sew the hole shut with gravitational thread. But the static pushed back. Shapes began to form within the distortion, jagged, geometric entities that defied Euclidean geometry. They swarmed toward the Dominion fleet. "They are attracted to your reactor signatures," Thorne said calmly. "Marshal, if you want to be useful, order your fleet to dump their coolant, vent it, create a thermal cloud. It will confuse them." Vrexian stood frozen. The sight of the cosmic horror had shattered his worldview. The petty squabbles of the Dominion seemed like the arguments of children in a sandbox, while a hurricane raged outside. "Do it," Thalcora roared, breaking protocol. "All ships vent coolant, full dispersion." The order went out. The Dominion fleet, thousands of ships strong, vented their superheated plasma coolant into the void. A massive cloud of glowing gas expanded around them. The entities paused, sensing the heat swarming into the cloud. "Now," Thorne commanded, "ignite it." The Silentium fired a single, small projectile into the cloud. The explosion was blinding, a supernova in miniature. The coolant ignited, burning at millions of degrees. The entities screeched, a sound felt in the teeth rather than heard, and evaporated. But the tear remained. It was widening. "The anchor is failing," the voice on the radio said. "Admiral, we need to seal it from the other side. We need a payload delivery into the breach." Thorne closed her eyes for a second. "Understood. Prepare the Vanguard protocol." She looked at Thalcora. "We have to close this now, or the chain reaction will consume this system, and then yours." "What is the Vanguard protocol?" Thalcora asked, dread pooling in his stomach. "We send a ship in," Thorne said simply. "With a singularity core, it detonates inside the breach, collapsing the tunnel." Who goes?" "We take turns," Thorne said. "Today, it seems, is the Silentium's turn." "You mean to sacrifice your ship?" Vrexian gasped. "That vessel it is a god among ships. You would throw it away." "It is a tool," Thorne said. "And we are the shield. Get your fleet out of here. When we enter the breach, the gravitational backlash will crush anything within 10,000 kilometers. Run." "No," Thalcora said. We cannot just leave you." "You must," Thorne said. Her image began to flicker. "Go back to your council. Tell them what you saw. Tell them the human exclusion zone is not closed because we hate you. It is closed because we love you enough to die for you. Do not come back. Do not send ships. Just live well." The connection cut. The three humans vanished from the bridge. "Admiral," Thalcora shouted. On the view screen, the massive monolith of the Silentium began to move. It didn't turn. It didn't bank. It simply accelerated straight toward the tearing wound in reality. Its engines flared, not with fire, but with a blue shift distortion that bent the light of the stars behind it. "Helm hard to port, maximum thrust," Vrexian bellowed, his voice cracking. "Get us out of the gravity well." The Dominion fleet turned, engines screaming as they fought the sudden tidal forces created by the human ship's acceleration. They ran like frightened children. Behind them, the Silentium hit the breach. There was no explosion. There was an implosion. A flash of light so intense it blinded the sensors, followed by a sudden, violent silence. The gravity wave hit them, tossing the massive dreadnoughts like leaves in a gale. Hulls groaned, alarms screamed, but they held. And then stillness. Thalcora pulled himself up from the deck. "Status." "Visuals returning," the sensor officer whispered. The screen flickered to life. The breach was gone, the static was gone, the Silentium was gone. There was only the quiet, empty void and the distant stars. Vrexian stood at the window, his hands trembling. The arrogance was gone from his posture. He looked small. They destroyed it," Vrexian said. "They sealed it," Thalcora corrected, "with themselves." The bridge was silent for a long time. The realization of what had happened washed over them. The humans had not been hiding. They had been holding the door shut for centuries. While the galaxy played at war, humanity had been fighting the apocalypse. "What do we do?" Vrexian asked, looking at the Justicar. "How do we explain this, the loss of the Silentium? It was our fault. We weakened the wall." Thalcora looked at the empty space where the human ship had been. He felt a profound sense of shame, but also a new, burning purpose. "We explain nothing of the fault," Thalcora said. We will not dishonor them by admitting our stupidity to the public, but we will change. Change. We will withdraw, Thalcora said firmly. We will declare this space sacred ground. We will place warning beacons not of threat but of memorial. And we will fix the hyper lanes ourselves. We will stop looking for shortcuts. We will stop fighting over scraps. The Council will not accept that, Vrexian argued weakly. They will, Thalcora said, turning to face the Marshal. Because you and I will tell them. And we will tell them that if they ever try to enter human space again, they will not face the humans. They will face the Ethelgard fleet. We will be the outer guard. We will protect the protectors. Vrexian looked at the Justicar, then back at the stars. He straightened his uniform, wiping the dust from his medals. He nodded slowly. Agreed, Vrexian said. We hold the line here. The return to Onyx Prime was different. The fleet did not limp back in defeat. It returned in solemn procession. When Thalcora stood before the conclave again, the chamber was just as loud, just as contentious as before. Where are the riches? The guildmasters demanded. Where is the conquest? The warlords shouted. Thalcora stood at the podium. He did not use holograms. He did not use charts. He simply looked at them with the eyes of a man who had stared into the abyss and seen a hand reach out to pull him back. There is no conquest, Thalcora said, his voice echoing in the hush. There are no riches, there is only the silence. You failed, a technopriest sneered. We survived, Vrexian stepped up beside him. The presence of the militarist backing the diplomat silenced the room. The humans are not to be disturbed, not today, not ever. Any ship caught plotting a course for the exclusion zone will be fired upon by my command. Confusion rippled through the hall. Why, someone asked, what is out there? Thalcora closed his eyes, remembering the silver-haired woman, the dark ship, and the terrible, selfless sacrifice. Guardians, Thalcora said, and they are busy. Epilogue, the Watchers. Decades passed. The Ethelgard Dominion changed. The resource crisis was solved not by theft, but by innovation, forced by the necessity of isolation. The peace treaties held, enforced by a military that seemed to have lost its taste for petty blood. At the edge of the exclusion zone, a station was built. It was not a fortress, but a listening post. It was manned by a joint crew of Ethelgard and Sarnax. High Justicar Thalcora, now retired and ancient, sat in the observation deck of the station. He spent his final days watching the dark nebula. Every now and then, the sensors would pick up a spike of energy, a gravitational wave, a momentary tear in the fabric of space that was quickly, violently stitched shut. And sometimes, just sometimes, a signal would drift through the static, a burst of encryption that translated to simple binary updates. Breach contained, Sector 7 secure, casualty count acceptable, standing by. Thalcora would smile, sipping his tea. We are still here, he would whisper to the darkness, and we are listening. The galaxy had finally recognized the fright. It wasn't the fear of what the humans would do to them. It was the terrifying realization of what the universe would do to the galaxy if the humans ever stopped. And so the humans remained the monsters in the dark, the bogeymen of the void. And the galaxy slept soundly, wrapped in the blanket of a terrifying, beautiful lie, protected by the silent monsters who asked for nothing, not even to be known.